Hi everyone. Today we're talking to Crispin Argento, director of The Sorcery. The Sorcery provides a transformative new approach to sourcing that connects brands, retailers, suppliers directly to growers. Hi Crispin, great to have you with me today.
Hi Anna, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm doing very well. I'm very excited about having you here with me today to dig deeper into the cotton supply chain, but also a little bit about you and your background. I'm also very excited about hearing more about. So I actually want to start with that. I want to know a little bit about you. Briefly, who are you? Where do you come from? What do you like to do?
Yeah, of course. And it's a brief story. So I'm the director of The Sorcery, as you mentioned. It's a platform where brands, retailers, and suppliers can connect directly to growers, and not only growers themselves, but the leading growers from a sustainability perspective around the world. I have been in the textile area sector for about a decade. I've done a number of different entrepreneurial ventures, from consulting to having my own brand to running an incubator back in the United States, where we worked with small brands to help them become more sustainable and scale. Most recently, before Sorcery, I served as the executive director of the Organic Cotton Accelerator, where I really fell in love with cotton as a crop and the growers, of course, the farmers that do it, but also saw real opportunity to truly transform the cotton sector from what I refer to as sustainability status quo to a direct to grower model that connects brands, retailers, and suppliers, as I mentioned, directly to farmers. That is the way that I see the future of the sector going. So that's about me. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So what do you see what is the challenge and what is the problem that you are solving with this direct to growers approach?
Well, I mean, there are a number of challenges, but I tend to look at them more positively in the sense that if we think about sustainability and we think about how sustainability is driven, it's particularly in cotton, organic cotton, BCI cotton, CMI cotton is only created from the growers themselves. It's not something that's created in the supply chain. Once a t-shirt is a t-shirt, that cotton that makes that t-shirt organic is because of the efforts and the work that the farmers put in way back in the supply chain. And so I look at the direct to grower model as a tool that enables this relationship between brands, retailers that have huge demand for sustainable cotton, and then the growers who I mentioned are the only ones who are able to supply sustainable cotton. So how do we really truly match sustainable demand with sustainable supply? And that's what we're looking at, because right now, as we talk about the challenges that exist, and we'll get into that more, I'm sure, there's what I call the chasm, and I kind of describe it on the website. And it's this disconnect between the supply and demand. But in that chasm, you have a lot of unintentional and intentional mixing of sustainable fibers. You have a lot of potential fraud that exists with selling a sustainable fiber or a conventional fiber as a sustainable fiber. And you have just a lot of inefficiencies in the supply chain that can be addressed critically if you engage every stakeholder along the chain and really facilitate a collaborative approach from end to end, starting with the grower and going to the retailer and bringing that all together. So that's the work that we do with the Sorcery, and it's working out well.
I would like to start off talking a bit about cotton as a material or as a fiber as well, and why it is, I mean, it's one of the world's most, if it's not the world's most popular material for garments anyway. Why has it become such a good and loved material?
Well, I mean, cotton is as controversial as cotton is at times, or can be. It's also, like you said, it's probably the most loved fabric in the world. Its versatility is unmatched. For example, I'm wearing cotton socks, cotton pants, cotton shirt. I'm sure the same is for you. There might be some blends in there, but at the end of the day, that's what we wear. It's what we sleep in. That's what we bathe in, etc. And cotton is all around us. It's a material that's been around commercially for 5,000 years, and has solved a lot of problems, not only for the textile world in terms of its scalability and growth, but at the same time, it also has led to economic development. But also, to be fair, cotton has been, not on the controversial side with respect to sustainability, as it is constantly criticized with, which is often not really honest and truthful. It's also been at the forefront of really awful humanitarian, tragic humanitarian issues like slavery, like the slave trade and the growth of the United States in the early days, and et cetera, which exists today. I mean, cotton is there. There's no doubt we're dealing that right now in Shenzhen, with the Chinese crisis that's going right now. We know that there's a lot of forced labor issues in cotton in India and in Turkey and other places around the world, because it's anyways, I'm getting into off topic, but cotton is amazing material. It's not going anywhere.
No,
I'll leave it at that.
I also think it's an amazing material. I love to wear it. But so why is it, if you try to break it down a little bit, what are these controversial parts of it? If we look both on the environmental sides and on the social issues, what is it that is negative about the cotton industry?
Well, I think it's a lot of, look, cotton, like a lot of crops, if you were to look at from the agricultural lens, growing food, growing fiber requires resources, water, energy, chemistry, etc. The other side of it is that leads to commercial kind of challenges and misunderstanding, is that there's really poor data around cotton and the actual use. A lot of the data that is bandied about in the sector really comes from about 5 or 6 LCAs that are all outdated, and all were intended to be used only to understand a single farm in, let's say, Madhya Pradesh, India, or in Georgia in the United States, or in someplace else. But we've attached the performance of that farm and compared BCI to organic, to CMIA, to conventional, and said, well, all cotton is like that. And that's just not true.
So then what is the solution to that? I mean, wouldn't it be possible to just do a proper LCA or a number of more LCAs to kind of compare with and so on? Or why is that not?
Well, that is the solution. At the end of the day, the LCA, the data that comes from a particular farm or a particular study, is good data. Think of it like this. Let's just say the Higg index looked at a facility that's operating with the latest technology in terms of dye stuffs and energy efficiency and water efficiency, and has incredible programs. We've been in those facilities where they're jaw-dropping. You're like, this is the future. And take that facility and says, well, that facility is the same as every other facility around the world. Or on the opposite, let's look at the worst operating facility that's dumping their water into a river basin, that's using, that's burning coal out front to power the building, et cetera, and saying, well, that's all suppliers. That is what's happening within the fiber space. And so for cotton or wool or any other preferred fiber, we have to start collecting primary data at the farm on a grower by grower or farm by farm basis to be able to compare that performance of that particular farmer or that particular farm group with others, and create a pre-competitive model where we drive sustainability outcomes, just like Higg is doing for facilities. But we're not afforded that opportunity, and growers are not afforded that opportunity right now in the system. And that's why, for example, we've seen, with some of the scores that are in the MSI, where leather and other industries like silk have asked their data to be removed, because it's just not representative of everybody. And that's the problem. I don't imagine that a supplier like artistic milliners, for example, in Pakistan, which we all know is really advanced, would like their data to be used for another denim mill down the road that might not have invested tens of millions of dollars in new facilities and equipment. So that's the issue. That's a real issue, and we have to get beyond that with growers.
So the solution is that every actor along the supply chain, including the grower, does its own facility module within Higg, for example, and
the equivalent, yeah.
Data.
Yeah, and there's movement in that direction. BCI and the Global Coffee Platform have been working on piloting a solution called the Project Delta, which is in that direction. But again, collecting that data, validating that data is expensive, and it's difficult to do that at scale when to get good data, it costs money, and it also requires direct engagement with those growers. Now, we can collect that data in the context of BCI or organic, and a number of other schemes have signed on to that platform. But again, that data is worthless when that fiber leaves the farm, because as we said earlier, it just gets mixed up. So how do we get the data that's coming from a particular farmer that's performing well? That data gets translated into a t-shirt that then gets translated into a garment that's sitting on a retail floor. So let's say in an envisioned future, you could have t-shirts over here that are organic and their quote unquote Higgs score is X. And you can have similar t-shirts that are also organic and their quote unquote Higgs score using fiber is Y. That is what we need in the future, not let's just all assume that this organic t-shirt from Turkey and the organic t-shirt from India is the same, because the truth is it's not. It's been through, it's grown on a different farm and it's been through a different supply chain. So if we're going to talk about carbon, we're going to talk about water use, we've got to be able to aggregate that. And then that should translate into what a brand should be reporting on its real true water impact or its chemical impact or its GHG impact.
When you're saying that we need this type of disclosure for every part of the supply chain, doesn't that require more transparency than what we have today as well, so that we know, so each and every step of the supply chain is visible and transparent?
Yeah, it requires transparency and traceability, but one of the things that we work with, and of course that's been the big conundrum, right? How do we trace our supply chains? How do we have that transparency? When the truth of the matter is even most brands, except for the larger ones that have put in this effort, really can't get down below tier 1, and some of them can get down to tier 2, which is I consider fabric or wet processing. Yeah. They have no idea where their yarn is coming from at tier 3, which can be, depending on how you label the tiers, which is yarn. And then of course they have no idea who that merchant is, and they have no idea where that farm is coming from outside of being that. So one of the tools that we've developed in the direct to grower model is we kind of turn traceability on its head, and we said, let's go to the source of the fiber first and use forward transaction momentum to move that all the way to the brand. Rather than the brand trying to dig from their angle, let's go to the farm and go up. And people are much more willing to disclose information and to partner when there's an opportunity for sale behind that. Interesting. So that's what I talk about, forward transaction momentum, is if I'm a grower and I'm a farmer and I'm a brand, I say, I want to nominate this farm group in India. And that same brand says, hey, Spinner, I want you to buy from this farm group in India. Now that Spinner has a mandate from the brand to buy from that farm group in India. Now that farm group has a guaranteed offtake of their fiber, and that Spinner knows that that fiber meets their performance requirements in terms of making yarn and costing. And then they just pass that then on to either the fabric manufacturer and to the t-shirt manufacturer, the CMT, and then off to the brand. And so you incentivize traceability rather than try to force it by going the opposite direction. It's no different than going upstream or downstream. We talk about upstream and downstream in the supply chain. Well, have you ever tried to paddle upstream in a river? It's nearly impossible. So is traceability paddling upstream. And so let's start at the river head and go down and use that momentum to get what we want. And that's what the whole direct to grower model is, and it's working.
Very interesting. I really like that idea. However, is this feasible for the majority of the brands, you think, to actually nominate the spinning mill?
Feasible, yes. Practical, yes. Challenging, yes. And I only say that because it is, and I say this on the website, but it's also, it requires a transformative approach to sourcing and procurement. It's turning these old models of zero risk and last mile sourcing to planning for the future. So you have to remember that when cotton is generally sown, the seed is put in the ground until it's harvested. till the brand receives it. It's anywhere, can be anywhere from 9 to 12 months.
Mm.
So there's a huge disconnect between when a brand needs t-shirts based on merchandising and margin calls and other types of drivers to when the cotton is grown. And so one of the part of that direct to grower facilitation is we essentially take not only the distance between a brand that might be sitting in Europe and a farmer that's sitting in India, and all of the different stages in between as that product goes around the world, but we close that gap of 9 months.
Let's say that it's a small brand is looking at this interview and it wants to learn more about how to,
Sure.
Because many of these brands that have these type of ambitions as well are fairly small. I mean, some of these new brands, they have very high ambitions on transparency and traceability and so forth. And would it be possible also for those guys to have this approach?
It's possible. Again, it's having honest conversations with your supply chain and asking and very clearly saying this is what we want and is this possible. So for example, one of the projects I'm potentially working on right now is to move literally one container of nominated cotton for a small brand from a grower to their spinner in Latin America. Latin America spinner makes the fabric as well, sends to China. China goes back, sends the goods back to the United States. So we're putting that together right now. Now, is the cost of the fabric going to be more expensive for that brand? Absolutely. They're paying the interest charge in the cotton, they're paying the shipping cost for the cotton, et cetera, et cetera. And what's required of that spinner to go above and beyond, not to just use their cotton that's sitting in their warehouse, but using this specific cotton and putting it in this product. Now, it's a matter of MOQs and a matter of other things, but that again is one of the ways that we do it. But once we build a supply chain, for example, we've gone through that process, we see where the inefficiencies are in terms of cost, in terms of time, in terms of just other elements, but then we can start to aggregate other brands that are working with that same supplier around that supplier. Mm-hmm. So for example, I now know of 7 other brands that are all small that we could also put into the same supply chain, say, hey, grower, will you sell to these other brands as well? And now we're not shipping one container, we're shipping 6 or 10 or 15 of that same cotton to that same spinner. And now it makes financial sense for that spinner to take that cotton and do their normal day of business. And the cost of fabric doesn't have to be, whatever, $7 a yard. It now can go back to $4 where it was at commodity.
I understand. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. But then how about the social aspects of cotton?
Well, and I guess in terms of scope, we're talking about the social risks at the farm level.
Yes.
And potentially at the gym level as well. Yeah. So there's two things, and the social risks again are born in a number of factors. It's the operating cost of a farm, right? So for example, one thing that no one talks about, organic cotton in most agricultural regions outside the United States requires hand picking. In fact, most cotton globally requires still hand picking. It's no different than it was in the 1800s. You send armies of people out there that they have a basket and they're picking the bolls off of each of the plants and putting them together. And so, I think the numbers are something like this, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's about 95% of farm growers in the United States, or cotton growers in the United States, are using mechanical pickers, like those big John Deere machines. 100% in Australia, and something like 30 to 40% in Brazil. Everywhere else, they don't really exist for the most part. Select farms in China, select farms in Turkey, but that's really where industrial agriculture from a cotton perspective works. Everything else is relatively medium-sized to small holding farms that require hand picking and hand, and that's where the pressure is largely. And so and again, if you don't have that equipment, then you have to rely on cheap labor to do this, because the margins on cotton for a lot of growers are so thin. So that's the issue. That's where the pressure comes. And so that's where we talk about, child labor on farms, forced labor on farms. You have a big issue in Syria and Southwest Syria, or Southwest Turkey right now, because of the Syrian migration. That's where the social pressures happen. And then again, and that also happens at the gin level, because the gins require a lot of people to go through this cotton that's been handpicked, to sort it out, to clean trash content, you name it, dirt, rocks, plastic, nuts and bolts, food. I mean, it's big heaps, and that's where this inefficient process that exists out there puts pressure, social pressure for labor demand. And that's where it comes from.
So that's a great, I think, picture of what the issue is. But what can consumers, I mean, what can consumers ask for, and what can brands and retailers do in order to avoid or work proactively against these issues?
Well, I think you can, take a similar approach that the brands and retailers have taken with respect to social labor issues in the supply chain itself, or try to understand. I mean, initially, of course, you look at the genesis of that, and it was, let's send a code of conduct, and if we send in auditors and they're green, great, and if they're red, we don't work with them. Now it's taking a little bit different, more human-based approach, where they're trying to understand some of those factors, like better buying, for example, and other types of organizations are educating brands and retailers and the supply chain itself on what are those fundamental pressures that exist that lead to forced labor. And so I think if we were to understand what those pressures are that I somewhat described very high level, at the agricultural level, we can look at that, and it really comes down to, and I'm going to say it controversially, it comes down to money. If I'm paid enough for my cotton to have enough of a margin to, as a grower, then potentially if I'm an ethical grower, or I'm, want to make sure that the people that are working on my farm are taken care of, then I have the ability to pay them, a decent wage, let alone a living wage, if that's, some idealized world. And I don't have to rely on migratory or illegal or forced labor in order to sell my product, or to deliver my product to my buyer.
Okay.
And what that cost is, I don't know. It just depends.
So an increased price would, I mean, theoretically anyway, be the solution.
An increased price, with the promise that with that increase of price of the cotton, that there are no forced labor issues, that, there's a documentation on who you've hired, what you've paid, how many hours they worked, etc. Do they have the right protections? Things like that.
And then again, we come back to the need of transparency, because then you really need to understand where the farm is and which farm are you buying from.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there are regional hotspots. I mean, we talked about Uzbek, which has been trying to make its way back. And again, the whole sector sort of quote unquote banned Uzbek cotton, at least on paper. Same thing, the way that they're banning Shenzhen cotton, but nothing really is happening at the farm level. That cotton still is ending up in a t-shirt, regardless of whether a brand wants it to or not. I can tell you that. Sadly, I know that's controversial.
So banning, so why did that work in Uzbekistan? Because now we hear reports that the Uzbeki government is taking a lot of measures to improve the labor conditions and so on. Why would that not work in Xinjiang?
I think it worked in Uzbekistan because there's alternatives to the fiber. You can basically shut the door to Uzbekistan and say, okay, we'll get our cotton from China, we'll get our cotton from Turkey, we'll get our cotton from Central Asia or other parts of Central Asia that don't have these institutionalized government-supported issues. In Shenzhen, it's a different story. You're talking about 20% of the world's global cotton supply. And you have to also understand how the Chinese government regulates their cotton, their import cotton. They basically have a quota system, and they buy cotton largely to, I wouldn't say manipulate, but to get a advantageous position in the market. So oftentimes the cotton that they're buying and importing is not really for gin and mill use, or for mill use rather. It's to play with the market. And so it's not as though a spinner that's doing 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 metric tons of fiber, which is 50,000 metric tons is normal in China for a big spinner, that they can just say, okay, well, we're going to cut out 20% of your supply. It just doesn't work like that.
So just finally, I think you have already touched upon it a little bit, but how do you see the future of cotton? So let's say 10 years time from now, how do we consume cotton and what does it look like?
I think, it's hard to forecast the future, of course, but I think that it will look largely the same as it does today. Cotton is a critical commodity to the apparel sector. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to be supplanted by polyester or by recycled cotton. I think I would, as my envisioned future for the sector, I would like to see more brands engage at the grower level, and that's happening. I mean, that's not my doing. It's more an ongoing trend. It's a matter of just who's getting on the train and who's not. And I think those brands that don't get on the train are going to be left behind, because this is the future. It's about securing your supply of cotton. And as the climate change, as global geopolitics shift, it's going to be very difficult to manage this without forging a strong relationship with your supply chain, let alone, at tier 1, tier 2, but also with cotton growers that supply chain relies on for the physical component of their product. I mean, this shirt I'm wearing literally is 98% cotton, not by content. It's 100% cotton outside of the buttons and the polyester trim. So I see that the future, and I think that it will also shift the way that brands are sourcing, where it really is a mutual. Some brands see this way already. They don't see it as I'm a powerful brand, you're a poor or less powerful supplier. It's we have a mutual dependency on one another, and my business is as good as your business. And I think that will change the things, and that will get more and more brands to go down to the grower level to understand that. And literally you're sitting at a round table and you've got the farmer, you've got the merchant, you've got the gin, you've got the merchant, you've got the spinner, you've got the fabric mill, you've got the CMT, and they say, let's do this. We're going to make 20 million t-shirts. And let's do this sustainably, and let's work this through. And the farmer says, cool, I'll plant the seed. Gin says, I'll gin your fiber. Fabric guy says, I'll weave your denim, and so forth and so on. Now that's an idealized way, but you look at it like that, and that's truly collaboration.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Crispin. I think we're going to leave off with your vision there for the future on collaboration. I really like the thought of that. Yes, I just want to say thank you so much for being with me today and talking about cotton with me. I have really appreciated
thanks, Anna, and congratulations on the new handbook, and pleased and honored to be part of it. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.